all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or of a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth.
Tonight, on Christmas Eve, at the culmination of our Advent journey, we light the Christ candle. As Mary and Joseph settled in for the night, they knew their baby was coming. The hope of the world, embodying love, who inspires joy and brings peace, would be born into obscurity. The King of Kings would be born not in a palace, but in a feeding trough. The birth of Jesus reminds us that God isn't afraid to get his hands dirty. He's willing to dive into the chaos and messiness of our world, a light shining in the darkness. So tonight, as we light the Christ candle, may it provide a tangible image of Jesus, the light of the world, illuminating the dark places in our world. So Jesus, thank you for not standing far off, but for coming near to us. Thank you that your light continues to shine to this day, refusing to be extinguished. And Father, thank you for the gift of your Son, Jesus, who shines brightly in the darkness of our world.
For to us, from Isaiah 9, verses 6 through 7. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this.
Would you stand and worship with us and sing, Come, Long Accepted Jesus?
Come, thou long expected Jesus, born to set thy people free. From our fears and sins release us. Let us find our rest in thee. Israel's strength and consolation, above all the earth thou art. Dear desire of every nation, joy of every longing heart. Born thy people to deliver, born a child and yet a king, born to reign in us forever. Now thy gracious kingdom bring. By thine own eternal Spirit, rule in all our hearts alone. By thine all-sufficient merit, raise us to thy glorious throne.
And you may be seated. This is from Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 14. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. And she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly a great company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests." Again, would you stand with us as we sing, "Oh, come, all ye faithful." Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Sing choirs of angels, sing in exultation. Oh, sing, all ye citizens of heaven above. Glory to God, glory in the highest. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Yea, Lord, we greet thee, born this happy morning. Jesus, to thee be our glory. Word of the Father, now in flesh appeared. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. You may be seated.
The next reading comes from Luke 2:15 through 20. When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby, who was lying in the manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told to them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told.
Would you stand again with us as we sing "Joy to the World"?
Joy to the world,
The Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, the Savior reigns. Let men their songs employ, while fields and floods, rocks, hills, and plains repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. No more let sins and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the ground. He comes to make the blessings flow, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love. You may be seated. So tonight, we have the opportunity to respond to God's goodness as we always do. Usually we receive an offering to support the mission and ministry of Trinity. But tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We have a special Christmas offering for Covenant World Relief and Development. And Covenant World Relief and Development, they do amazing work. They are the first one on the scenes when disaster strikes. When there are hurricanes in places like Florida or Alaska, or there are disasters around the world, the Covenant is often the first on the scene to provide aid. And long after the TV cameras have gone away, the Covenant stays until the job is done. And so if you would like to designate an offering tonight, we do have special offering envelopes out there in the narthex. You also, when you donate online, there is a option also to donate to this special offering to Covenant World Relief and Development. And we do thank you for your generosity, because God has blessed us so that we might be a blessing to others. And so as we consider what God might be calling us to, whether it's this offering or how God might be leading you into 2023, we have a special offertory that was recorded by Lisa Maris. And there are some images that go along with what she's playing to illustrate the Christmas story. So turn your eyes to the screen and consider how God comes so very near to us. fact that there are so many here at Trinity that offer their gifts up, that contribute into the mission and ministry of what God is doing here in different ways. Some are up front and are seen, and some are not. And so I love the fact that we have so many that contribute. And I want to thank Linda Kozak for stepping in to play the piano. She found out on Thursday that she'll be playing tonight. And so that's the spirit of this place, is to jump in and step into ministry as it happens. And this church is so good at doing that. And I love the images in that video because I think they illustrate very well the theme that we've had for this Advent, which is that Jesus is a light in the darkness. That as you looked at the images, there's not a lot of serenity. Matter of fact, there is a lot of fear and questioning and anxiety. And I think we would agree that there is often so much that we can be fearful of or anxious about in our worlds. And we can take confidence that those biblical authors that wrote the Gospels, they understood that yes, this world is a real place. This is not a fairy tale. This is not something that was written out of a fanciful imagination. But no, this is real life. That these are real people that are in this story, and a real God stepped into the real problems of their world to illuminate the darkness. And so tonight we are going to reflect on the words that were read by Amy earlier tonight from John chapter 1. And John wrote his gospel last because some decades had passed since Jesus had died and ascended into heaven, and there began to be some different ideas about Jesus. And there was kind of this theory going around that, you know what, maybe this was just sort of someone's fanciful imagination about Jesus. Maybe he was just a really good teacher. But certainly he couldn't be God in the flesh, could he? And John knew Jesus very well. Not only was he one of Jesus' original 12 disciples, original 12 followers, but he was part of kind of this inner circle of Peter, James, and John that knew Jesus intimately well. And so as he writes these words, these beautiful words in John 1, they are very poetic and theological. Matter of fact, John was nicknamed the eagle because his words were soaring. They would kind of float off the page. But John would be very angry with us tonight if we just stayed philosophical and theological with his words, because John's writing about a very real God with a very real love who came very near to us 2,000 years ago. And so as he begins his gospel, he starts back at the beginning, not the beginning of Jesus' life, but the beginning. He goes back to echo the words of Genesis, and he says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He wants us to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that this man, Jesus of Nazareth, that he is God in the flesh. That this God that the people of Israel had been worshiping for thousands of years, that this God put on skin just like us and came and lived a life just like us. That he was with God in the beginning, and through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. That this man, this Jesus of Nazareth, was the eternal God. That Jesus was there at creation. When God spoke creation into existence, it was the words of Jesus that were the creative force. And that Jesus is in fact the source of all creativity. And I love that. When I think about the beauty of the music that's been played tonight, when I think about the beauty of the artwork, when I think about the creative spark that so many artists and so many poets have, the root of that is Jesus. Jesus is the prime creator. He is the source of all creativity. and he is the source of all creation. And John expands this blessing beyond just the chosen people to all people, and therefore every single human being on this planet is God's handcrafted creation. So if you are listening to the sound of my voice tonight, God knows you. God is writing your story. God made you exactly the way you are on purpose, for a purpose. That should give us a great amount of comfort. And you might say, well, I wish God would have given me this, or I wish God would have given me that. But there is no one else like you. There's no one else that can contribute to God's mission and ministry the same way that you can. God made you specifically as you are for his purposes. And he continues on in verse 4 of John chapter 1. He says, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. Jesus is the source of life. From the moment, actually before the moment that you take your first breath, while you're in your mother's womb growing, God is the nurturer. God is the one that planted that seed, that is that creative force behind your life. From your first day to your last day, God is the author of your story. And the light of Jesus is available to all. Now, light and dark are themes that John specifically uses quite a bit. Again, he's very aware that the world is a challenging place to live in. Amen? Does anybody else have struggles? Does anybody else sometimes get up in the morning and say, man, I don't know. What is the purpose of this? Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? God is present when you are celebrating and cheering, and God is present when you are struggling. He is there to walk with you through it all. And it's not exclusive to a person or a people group. And this is something, again, that God's people didn't always understand back in the first century. They often took the words that I have chosen you, and they said, oh, that's great. I love to be chosen. But no, you are chosen so that you might bear witness. It talks in that first chapter of John how John the Baptist, he came before Jesus to point the way. Now, John had followers of his own. John was becoming quite popular, but he did something that is unthinkable. Is that when Jesus comes along, he happily says, it's not me, it's him. You know, when we as human beings, we get into positions of authority or we get into positions of popularity, we love that. You know, it's like, oh man, I love that people listen to what I have to say. I love that people look up to me. But once Jesus comes along, John fades into the background. Because he knows that Jesus is writing a story that's bigger than something that John could write on his own. And he was writing a story that would offer the promise of redemption to every single human being. And in verse 5 is the promise that we've been focusing on for the last several weeks. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, we can be honest to say that, you know what? There might be some days that you wonder. There might be some days where you wonder, God, I don't really see you. I don't know why this is happening to me. I don't know why I'm going through this. I don't know why I can't catch a break. I don't know, God, why you don't come and intervene. And John knows that. John is well aware. John lived in a time where all of his peers, they died for their faith. John lived under great persecution his entire adult life because he followed Jesus. And the Roman emperors aren't too happy about that. John is writing from a place of pressure, of oppression. And he could have been full of fear, but instead he chooses to be full of hope, to declare in the midst of a time when the Romans seemed to be overcoming everything, that no, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John writes this at the height, at the strength of the Roman Empire. His friends would have been like, "Are you kidding me, John? The darkness has not overcome it." But no, John will not relent. The light shines in the darkness has not overcome it. And then as we get to verse 14, I'm going to share John 1, verse 14 from the Message translation, because I love the way that Eugene Peterson phrases this. He says, "The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. We saw the glory with our own eyes, the one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son, generous inside and out, true from start to finish." The Word, this almighty creative God that was with God in the beginning, became flesh and blood and moved into our neighborhoods, into our lives. He doesn't stay bound to the pages of this book, but comes to life and lives today. And we saw his glory with our own eyes, the one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son, generous from inside and out, true from start to finish. You see, God doesn't stand far off. He doesn't just stand up, be up in the heavens or in the clouds like the Greek gods that were very popular at the time that John writes this. He's got some other people groups in mind. But he's not like Zeus that sits up on Olympus and makes judgments from the clouds. No, he comes near. He comes close. He moves into our neighborhood. And he offers his grace. He generously offers his grace, even, maybe especially, to those who don't deserve it. So my question tonight is, how do you respond to this God who had come so near to us? God doesn't force his way into our lives. God doesn't pressure us to follow him. No, our God, he offers an invitation to life with him, but he doesn't force his way. He gives us the choice. And as he offers us his grace and his love and his light, he invites us not to keep it to ourselves. So I also ask tonight, how will you share the light that lights up the darkness of our world? Because this Christ who has come, he's the source. And in my life, I grew up in the church. I heard the stories. I prayed a prayer when I was 5. I ran down the street and said, Mom, I'm going to go to heaven. But it wasn't until I was a teenager until I really understood what that meant. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I decided to really follow Jesus. And I took that light into my own life. And just because I'm a pastor doesn't mean this is a unique story, that God calls each one of us to respond to this light and to take this light into the dark corners of our world, to illuminate the dark places. It could be poverty, it could be racism, it could be family division, family quarrels, it could be whatever kind of places in our world that need to be healed, but God offers his light to us. And tonight, as we sing Silent Night and we light our candles, would this be a symbol of the light of Jesus? Would you be willing to share that hope? Would you bring love into the places where there's hate? Would you bring hope into the places where there is despair? Would you bring joy into the places where there is sadness? Would you bring peace into the places where there is unrest? And so, as we have been the recipients of God's love and God's light, He tells us not to keep it to ourselves, but to share it with others.
Holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Run, young virgin, mother and child. Holy infant, so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night. Shepherds quake at the sight. Glory streams from heaven afar. Heavenly hosts sing Alleluia. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night. Son of God, love's pure light. Radiant beams from thy holy face. With the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth.
The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. As we passed the candlelight between each one of us, this room got a whole lot brighter. And you might wonder, what can I really do? What impact can I really make? But again, one light to spread to another light, to spread another light. It is a chain reaction. And it makes all the difference. So on this Christmas, as you go to celebrate with friends or family or whoever God might put in your path, would you be conscious to let your light shine? To bring hope and love and joy and peace wherever you go. That through us, God might work to light up our dark world. So as you go, know that God goes with you, that God created you, God is writing your story. He loves you so very much. Go in God's grace and peace. And before you walk away, make sure you blow out your candle so we don't set this place on fire. Merry Christmas. Play a little.